Hey, Facebook, it's been like 3 minutes since I was with you. If you didn't get a chance to watch my Facebook Live with Dr. Casey, as soon as Dr. Brian and I are done, I encourage you to go back, especially if you're someone who's doing that amazing juggling act of parenting and practice and being married and all of those demands that we have in our life. It was a really awesome conversation about 17 years ago, what advice would I give to my former self? Now, like Dr. Casey's been in practice 17 years. I've been at this game 21. So we just kind of discussed and had an open conversation about the advice that we would give to that person. So as you join us, please let us know where are you joining us from. I'm way up in Alaska. Dr. Brian is down in Florida. So if there could ever be like two further geographical positions on the same continent, and yes, Alaska is in the continental US. I always love it because, like on Amazon, they'll be like free shipping in the continental US, and then you put in your Alaska address, and they're like, well, it's got to be continental. I'm like, hello, geography. I may want to go back to that class because I am on North American continent. So Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again from Boca Raton, Florida.
Boca, beautiful Boca. So if you are in a warm climate, say hello. If you're in a cold climate, then go visit Dr. Brian. I'm sure he'd love it. A bunch of random people show up at his house. So one of the things that I asked Brian to join me for today is I got to hear his personal story at Alpha One. Hey, there's Deb. We love Deb.
Okay. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
I was actually going to trim it today, and my trimmers are not charged, so I guess I'll keep it.
Well, you got the hot cougar saying she loves it, so there you go. You're all set. And so, and shout out to Dr. Brian Johnston and Matt at Review Wave. Brian and I both got to speak there just a couple of weekends ago. It was an awesome event. And it was the first time I heard Brian's story. And I was like, dude, that is so powerful. We got to go on Facebook Live and share that, especially because it just blends so perfectly in with the ripple effect. In the boot camp, that's like our theme this year is how are each of us stepping up in our lives in order to create a greater ripple effect in our communities, across our regions, within our continent, and across the world. Like that's the impact that we all can have. And it really starts with who we are and what is our story. So Brian, like just jump in and tell us the story of how did you get here?
How did I get to where I am? Yeah, I guess, I graduated from Life Chiropractic School in 2002. And if you would have told me, my former self at that time, probably about 17 years ago, that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, I would have told you you're out of your mind. There's no way in heck I'm going to be in the software business. I'm going to go change the world, build a huge practice, multiple practices. That was my mission. That was the vision, right? And here I am today. Actually, I feel like I have a bigger impact in a lot of ways, but you don't see these things coming. But it actually, kind of before as you know, or if you don't know, if you're listening, Genesis Chiropractic Software, and we're also a billing service. So a software with all the bells and whistles you can think of, a cloud-based software we also do billing as well. Now that'll make more sense to you in a second here as I go through my story. But yeah, so I didn't think I'd be there. But it started with, before thinking about this, which is a solution, what is a solution? It started where you find a big problem, a major problem, and where there is no solution, and your purpose, just like I think you're talking about, Barb, is really what drives you, and the more tied you are to your purpose. I was just thinking about this. I got asked this question on another podcast. What's the best advice you ever had? It's just find your purpose and think about your purpose and pray about your purpose, because everything flows from that. No matter what you're doing in life, the more anchored you are in your purpose, the bigger impact you'll make, and it'll be effortless, right? So it started when I was in practice, very early on in practice, where I had a patient come in. His name was Chris, and Chris gets under care, comes to the workshop, gets under care, And at his first re-exam, he was off his Advil. He was taking 12 Advil every single day for his low back pain, and he was a roofer. So this is what he had to do just to provide for his family. But, re-exam, no surprise to us, but, pretty much a miracle, right? 12, however many visits later, he's completely off 12 Advil a day. So he's doing great. Family's under care. He comes in one day and he says, I need to speak to you alone. And we go in a private room and he says, I need to tell somebody I'm really depressed. I'm thinking about killing myself. And so luckily I had just been relatively recently out of school, so I remembered what you're supposed to say to somebody like that. It was actually a board question. You're supposed to ask them how they're going to do it. So I said, well, how are you going to do that? And he said, I have a gun in my shed and I have a note, and when everybody's asleep, I'm going to do that in the shed. And I'll leave the note and do it in the shed. So that means they're serious. That's why you asked that question. It wasn't a half-baked, I might do this, I'm not feeling good. It was, I have a plan for this. So I said, well, first of all, what happened here, Chris? You're doing great. I said, what did you change? What's changed in your life? Because from all appearances before that, he was doing well. And I said, what changed? I said, did you start taking drugs? He said, no, I stopped taking all the drugs. And I said, all what drugs? And he said, I was smoking marijuana every day. When I came home from work, I was drinking about a 6-pack. And he said he was doing some other stuff like recreational drugs. Of course, there was the Advil, and he was smoking. So I said, you stopped all of that? He said, yeah. I said, wow, Chris, first of all, your body is probably just trying to come back to some homeostasis. That's a lot of chemicals. Yeah. So I referred him to get help, and I said, but why did you do this? Chris, what made you think to do all of that? He said, well, when I came to the workshop, which is the new patient orientation, whatever you call it in your practice, he said, I realized that this was about more than my back and my pain. This was about my potential. And I realized that what I was doing was affecting my relationship with my children, my parenting, obviously, how that was affecting my children's performance in school, how that was affecting their relationships with other kids, how they were acting out. Obviously, my relationship with my wife, he was saying. And he said, I knew that I could be a much better man and should be. And I knew those things were in the way. So, and this is what I said, and ironically, Barb, when you spoke before me, you were talking about the ripple effect. And I often use that term in this story because, first of all, he got the big idea as much as you ever want anybody to understand chiropractic, like blown away, like, wow, I actually got that across somehow. I don't even know how. Like I guess my workshop was pretty good, but that was a lot, right, to get out of a workshop. And anyway, so the ripple effect. He understood the principle of chiropractic and the ripple effect that has in the world by changing just one person's perspective. He understood that it was going to affect his children today, but all the relationships that they had with other people, he already saw that. And throughout history. So you change one person's mind, you change history. And that's the amazing thing that we have in chiropractic. So one day, you might have a similar experience where you're driving, you're at the gym, you're working, you're doing something, you're kind of on autopilot. Maybe when you wake up and you think of a patient you haven't seen in a while. Well, one day I wake up and I have a sick feeling in my stomach. I still have it sometimes, where I woke up with Chris on my mind and I knew something wasn't good. And of course I confirmed that he actually did what he said he was going to do. So my first reaction, I don't know what everybody else's reaction would be, but my first reaction was, when was the last time I saw him? And so when I went to the office, I went to the charts and I looked and I saw like we did everything wrong. Like we didn't follow up on his no-shows. His re-exams didn't happen on time. His care plan was messed up. Like it wasn't done properly. And of course, one day he leaves without another appointment scheduled, and then he's off the radar, right? Then you never find it. And so we dropped the ball in a lot. And I had a great team. I had a really good team. They were on top of this stuff, generally speaking. How we messed up that poorly, I don't know. But I took, you have to take responsibility for that. And that hurts. That hurts a lot. When you know that it's your responsibility, that somebody's life is they're gone, is really, really hard to swallow. And so we got software, and that helped. It got better, right? Like there was the pop-ups and there was the touch screens and all that. And that was better, but I was still finding myself with situations where whatever happened to so-and-so, and then you go and you find out that there's some type of process or procedure in your practice that broke down, and that was the cause. And typically what I would do is train on that procedure again, kind of reinforce it, and it would get better until I lost a different patient for a different reason, for a different process, and train on that one until I would come full circle back to the one I started with, right? And with regular training involved, like it would just kind of keep happening. And it was one of the most frustrating things in the world, because you always have this other person. We can't have another Chris, and you're trying with software, and it got better, but the problem was not solved, and there was no solution. So what really hit home is when I had my son, you mentioned parenting from the beginning. He's home today. He's not feeling well. His name is when I was going to have him, you have to name your child. So I named him Christian. I named him so that I would never, because what happened was while he was about to be born, it sunk in deeper that Chris wasn't just my patient. He was somebody's child, and somebody's father, obviously, and somebody's husband. And you know that intellectually, but when you have a child about to be born, it really hits home. And I thought as he was about to come, that what if he walked into my office and was treated that way? I would want to kill those people. I'd be furious. So we named him Christian because I never want to forget that. I never want to forget the responsibility that we have. And Barb, like I started my talk at Review Wave, and if the Review Wave guys are listening, thank you. Love you guys. I think we kind of get complacent. I don't know if that's the best word here, but maybe you can help me. But
consciously unaware.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Consciously unaware.
We forget how urgent the problem we have with chiropractic is. How urgent. And I started with, there's an urgent problem in chiropractic. We're underperforming due to overwhelming demands. That's why we exist. Genesis exists. That's why I exist, is to figure out how we can be more efficient and effective. Because when there's 320 million people in this country alone, and there's only 100,000 chiropractors, maybe that's a very big estimate, on the planet, that would mean all of the chiropractors would have to see 3,000 visits a week to see everybody just in this country. And obviously there's billions of people. So we got to get way more effective and way more efficient. It starts with the patient experience and making sure that those types of things never happen. And if they do happen, proactively. You're not waiting for the patient to be gone and then having to go find out in your software or in your charts what happened. It should have already been told to you, right? Our software, what I realized ultimately is software has been built. All of them have been built, even the new ones that are in the cloud. Ours are Genesis in the cloud. Cloud doesn't matter. It's kind of like fundamentally, philosophically flawed in that it makes you go find the problem after it already happened. It's like treating a symptom with training. I get why it exists. I get why it started that way. It was better at the time, but there's something that was missing. So how did I find the solution? Ironically, is I met two gentlemen. I was practicing in Princeton, New Jersey. Met two gentlemen. The first guy was a Bell Laboratory scientist, a PhD in artificial intelligence, and he was the CIO at Lehman Brothers at one point back in the day. So very intelligent guy. His son was a computer science graduate from Princeton University, and my practice was in Princeton, New Jersey. So I got introduced to them by chance through my bookkeeper. It was just very, very random. and they asked me if I would start using this new billing software. Is kind of a concept, a theory, a methodology, they called it. And I said, sure. My billing company, I don't know if they're doing great. Who knows? It's the outsourced billing dilemma. You outsource it, you lose control, you lose transparency. You never really know, right, what's going on over there. But you get checks, so something's happening, but you're not sure if it's really happening. So I said, okay, let's try it. So we implement this thing, and my collections go up by 40%. And I promise this ties back to patient experience and Chris. So I said my collections go up by 40%, and they just kind of stay there, right? And I'm like, all right, after like a month or two, I'm like, guys, what the heck are you doing? Like, what's so different? I didn't change what I'm doing. My practice didn't spike in volume, right? I didn't change my codes. I didn't change my charges. What's different? So they said, okay, let's log into the system. Hey, we log into the system, and they show me. So it's a cloud-based thing where you're actually submitting claims in real time. This is how it was working at the time. So we click in, and he says, all right, you see that number right there? I said, yeah. He said, that's the number of claims that have to be followed up on by the end of the day. I said, okay. He goes, so he goes, here's the thing. Like the claim, it's better like claims being submitted online. That's good. The EOBs are automatically posting. That's good too. But here's the magic. That number is the number of claims that literally before the end of the day, they have to be followed up on. Something's wrong with them. Click on them. I click on the number, and I could see all the claims and why they're sitting there, like the reason why. I said, who found all these things? He said, that's the difference. There's artificial intelligence. This is 15 years ago in the cloud. Artificial intelligence, millions of rules find those things that people can't consistently find, things that are very, very minor that you can't, no person can look through EOBs and find all this stuff. And he goes, the magic of getting paid is, following up on the work, doing your work, doing all the work every single day. I said, oh, all right. And then he goes, click on a claim. I click on a claim, and I could see what the conversations were with the insurance company for that one claim. I could see anytime one little letter changed on the account or anything, it was completely transparent and accountable. Date and time, who did it, the date and time stamp, like you could see everything.
Accountability,
right? No more, she said, no more phone calls and emails. Where's my money? Like, no, there it is. I said, all right. So here's what I saw. When you're a chiropractor and you have this knife in your heart based on what's happened in your life, you say, oh, if I just had that for Chris, that would be much better than what I'm doing right now. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like I said, if the system would have told me with one number that Chris missed an appointment and not rescheduled, or Chris didn't have his re-exam, or Chris this and Chris that, and if it would have just told me, and I could have opened my software for the day and seen that had to be completed, he had to be rescheduled, he had to have his re-exam, he had to have his care plan. If I would have just seen that day, I would have made sure it happened. But I'm too busy to be that effective of a manager. I don't have time to go to look at all the reports and make sure everybody did everything that day. So if I just had that number, that would be a game changer. So those gentlemen and myself formed a partnership, which is the genesis of Genesis. And we started as a billing company, believe it or not, integrated with other softwares. And then we built documentation with artificial intelligence, and we built scheduling, and we built inventory management, and we built all the touch screens and check-ins and kiosks, and to this point where Genesis is what you would see as similar to what the other practice management systems look like, with feature wise, with the one difference of what we now call single point management. Anything that has to be completed before end of day to create an amazing patient experience comes to you with one number, and you could drill into it and see who owns what and what needs to happen. And you never leave the office without that number being zero. So you can sleep well at night. You did everything you possibly could to prevent the Chris situations. So that's the short story. Yeah.
I love it. And going back, a couple of things that really make a difference to me is knowing a person's why. Like, why is Brian with Genesis? Why did he start this company? Well, when you listen to his story, then that could be any one of us.
Yeah.
And to know that you cared, like you didn't just say, okay, well, that was Chris and I'm over it. You're like, no, I'm doing something about this. So there isn't another Chris associated with a chiropractic office, and I'm going to do everything that I can to prevent any other Chris's. And something that really struck me when you said your story, and that I think is so important to think about, that every single person who we meet, whether inside or outside our practice, there are other people in their life. And those other people, they're having an impact. Like I was just at Soul Purpose at the Wow Factory. I was on a leadership team this past week. And one of the things that we did as a team was go back and find out from people, like, what was your greatest pain? 100% were associated with a parent. Right. And we're not like trying to drudge up like all of this stuff about your childhood, except that we can see from that pattern then choices that individuals make to make that right. So like in this situation, like Chris being a depressed man, the impact that would have on his children, right? So now his children are probably nervous at school. Well, what does that have to do then with their scholastic performance? What is that then? How does that impact their relationship with their peers? The opinion that their teachers have on them? Like it's huge. It is a ripple effect. And so if we can, we must. If we can bring truth and love and light to someone's life, we must. And when we're so worried about things in our practice, which we need to be worried about them, we're running a business. When we're so worried about all of those demands, it makes it really difficult to be present time conscious. And guess what? If we're not present time conscious in our practice, all of us must understand there's no way you're going to be present time conscious in your home. And that's the whole conscious unaware. Like I'm consciously unaware. I'm just going through the motions. And that's what caused my wake up, was being consciously unaware and hurting my children and not realizing it. Like, hey, it's been a long day at the office and now I'm short tempered. Yeah, I'm the yeller. Well, I used to be the yeller. And the impact that has on my children, right? And so it all creates the ripple effect. So then the other thing that you said that is so important is, BJ's quote, we never know how far reaching something we may think, say, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow, right? So for those of you who've been doing your strategies for healthy living workshop, you're like, what does it matter? It matters. Chris's life was changed as a result of hearing that message. And if you listen to Dr. Brian, he's like, I don't even really know what I said that was so profound. Well, Chris showed up and he was ready for that message. He was looking for a reason to take care of himself. And through that health talk, he was able to see, like, oh my gosh, if I take care of myself, I get adjusted. Now my family's going to be better. I'm in. So we don't know how that message is going to impact others. It's just our duty to share the message, like to share that truth. And then when Brian was talking about how like single point management, how at the end of the day that you and your team can know, did I do and take care of my responsibilities for this day? Like instead of just grasping at balloons, like I hope that thing was done and I wonder if that was done. Through Genesis, it brings it all into single point management, which I absolutely love, that you can find out what is your team doing, and not to micromanage them, because that's not what this is at all. It's just making sure that your team knows what to focus on, right? And so you as the manager, so remember, as a leader in your business, your responsibility is to create vision, to cast vision, to create culture, and to hold accountable. So with Genesis, then it all brings that to one easy check system for you to look at, to know like, yep, we did our job, or whoops, we got some things to pick up on here. Did I say that all accurately?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you just said is not micromanage. And the scenario I had originally explained is what I consider management by fire. And, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to office managers and staff where they're living in that world and they're scared to death that the doctor's going to come in and something they found that they did wrong, right? And there's this constant unspoken tension where that exists, and the bigger the practice, the worse it is, because that was really pushing people. And how often I hear that doctors can't keep staff because why? They get burned out. What do people really want?
Yes.
What do they really want? They want to buy your vision. They want to buy your mission. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves, for sure. But if they have to live like that every single day, they are miserable. There's a breaking point for almost everybody. Here's what happens with a system like a single point management. They get to know what you want from them for you to be happy and satisfied with their performance every single day with one number. It's so much simpler. And if something let's say there is something that's left at the end of the day, the conversation is one of teamwork and camaraderie, right? It's, hey, Barb, how can I see there's 3 things left over. And I teach this kind of thing sometimes with management is there's 3 things left. How can I help you? It's like, or how can somebody help you? And what if that person says to you, well, there's 3, but I did 50 of them. Maybe they're out of capacity.
Right.
Maybe if it's no-shows, we turn on Review Wave and eliminate no-shows, and now that frees their capacity up, right? Maybe they say to you, well, I just started today, so what am I supposed to do with those 3 things, right? So they have a training issue, right?
Right.
Maybe they say to you, I hate doing those types of things. So maybe they're in the wrong seat in your practice. Maybe they're in the wrong practice altogether. We don't know, but at least we get to make that decision on the spot before we lose a patient. So in addition, everybody can see everybody else and what everybody has on their plate for the day. Imagine if we were practicing together, Barb, and you see I have 50 things and you have 2. You could take some work. Hey, do you need help? So the teamwork, the accountability, and I would say the decrease in the stress level when everybody's on the same page about how we know whether or not we're achieving our mission today is a game changer. We did it all today. High fives. We got everything done. Congratulations. Good job. I can go home and put my head down and not constantly be thinking about the practice. And what about this? And what about this? And what about that? And I can actually be present time conscious with my family when I'm with my family,
and your team can.
What's that?
I'm trying to say, like your team, like Doc, if you're someone who has like a crappy attitude about your team, like lean in and listen to this. Your team wants your approval more than you can ever imagine. And if they don't feel like they're measuring up, what kind of mom do you think that they're being? What kind of spouse do you think that they're being? What kind of father, right? Like all of us have such a huge impact and play such a major role in one another's lives. And when you're able, like I encourage all of you, care for your team as your team, as if they were a practice member. Like one of my team members is like kind of going through some stuff. And I said, let's get on the phone today. Let's figure out your strategy to be able to go through this thing with great success, just like I would with a private coaching client. That's my team member, for crying out loud. Of course, I care for them as much as my clients. And so I encourage all of you, if you have the wrong person altogether, then cut them free. Like refer them to another place, like make the connection for them, make the introduction for them. If you just have them in the wrong spot, please get to know them and find out what are they really good at. And if you don't have that spot, again, like cut them free. Like you still as a business owner have a duty, a responsibility, and obligation to know what your team needs and then to have the right people in there. But if they need training, if they need support, like help them. And with Genesis, you know, one thing like that Jason and I were talking about too, that you guys can really help Doc see like, where is the breakdown? Not to make a doc feel wrong, but hey, let's solve this. Like, look at, like, we can see all of this stuff that's happening in your practice. Let us help you solve those challenges so that you can be satisfied, that you can be the doc you've always dreamed about being, and have that strong support staff. So we've only got a couple more minutes. Let's talk real quickly about Kickstart. And for those of you who want to find out more about Genesis, Brian will put a link below. Please jump on the phone with their team. Like, I am like over the moon, so happy with this team, and just like their level of commitment and their support of chiropractic, and I love their why. So Brian, what is Kickstart? Who is it for, and why is it such just a critical move for whether a student or a new doc, or let's say a re-emerging doc, to have?
Well, the philosophy. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words and about myself and my team and my company. It's really nice to hear, especially from you. I've really enjoyed spending more and more time with you. We've gotten, just so happen to be crossing paths a lot more frequently.
Yeah.
So it's been nice. And so one of the kind of the thought process as we created, so there's Genesis, by the way, if you want to learn more, genesischiropracticsoftware.com, you can click and schedule a time right from the website. But Kickstart, the program that we started called Kickstart, the concept was, we know we have the best platform out there. How do we make it available for everybody? Because what we used to get is these students that were coming out, or somebody that was associate for years and years and years, and they just wanted to go out and really crush it finally, and they just built the confidence, and then they were going to go start a business without having the best at their disposal. So I said, we got to do something for them. How can we invest in them?
And then that third category that you and I have talked about, right? That third category is someone who's been in practice and just kind of been going along. Maybe they've been really involved in their personal life. So they're not new to practice, but they're ready to take it to the highest level.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we have an urgent problem in chiropractic. So if I believe that, I got to put my money where my mouth is. So what I decided to do, or I should say my team and I decided to do, was create a program where the monthly fee for Genesis scales up over a 3-year period. So that in the beginning, it's a very, very low $97 a month. And then it scales up the second year and the third year up to the normal fees. And that does vary a little bit depending on what type of practice you have. But just so you know, the 97 is where you start. And that way, I considered that, hey, and we've been doing this for a bunch of years now, and I can't tell you how many amazing practices we get to see now that started like that, and now they have these huge booming practices, and it's really nice to know that I had a small part in investing in that business in a way. We'll never get that money back, but that money was just, hey, just go get started. Don't worry about it. This isn't the last thing you should be thinking about when you're opening your practices, is your cash flow being that tight because of the software that's going to serve you in the future in a big way. But on day one, when you have 0 patients, it shouldn't be the thing holding you back. So that's called the Kickstart program. That's it.
So when they go to Genesis, and then it's .com/chiropractic software, right?
genesischiropracticsoftware.com.
So is there something that they should check to say, I specifically want to learn about Kickstart? Or is that like, how do they specifically find out about, one, do they qualify for Kickstart? And 2, how will it benefit them?
So when you go to the website, if you're going to schedule a consultation with our consultation team, so there'll be a little link on the bottom. It's actually all over the website, schedule a consultation. When you click on that, you'll pick your time zone and your day of the week that works. And then it gives you the availability, and you put your information in. You mentioned that you learned about us through Barb. And what'll happen is when you get on the call, you can just have that conversation. You heard about Kickstart. Do I qualify for that? It's part of the conversation. One thing you'll notice when you get on the phone with my team, it's not going to be a fast moving, let me show you a bunch of features and give you a quick pricing and try to give you the special for the month and get you to close and sign this thing by the end of the call. They're going to ask you a lot of questions about who you are, where you are in practice, like how you do things, how you want to do things, what's holding you back. they really genuinely care about our purpose, because I would not let them be here if they didn't. They're going to really try to get to know you and what you need. And part of that discussion will be kickstart, not kickstart, all that stuff.
Nice. I love it. All right. So obviously, Brian and I are going to have to do another Facebook Live because I really want to dive more into the single point management.
Sure.
And so it's one of the flagships and one of the distinguishers of Genesis that aligns with your purpose and aligns with Chris. So we'll get that scheduled again. If you do have questions about Genesis, please reach out to Brian. Can people Facebook message you?
Facebook's fine. You can email me, Dr. Brian at genesischiropracticsoftware.com. Facebook's real easy, though. So just Brian Capra. You can find me there.
Awesome.
And I'd be happy to chat with anybody that has any questions. And Barb, thank you again for the opportunity to get in front of your tribe. And they're a great bunch. I could see that some of those names out there, Joe and Tabor, and recognizing, and Natalie, of course.
Yep.
Good.
So I do want to ask everyone, share this. And Brian's story will encourage all of us to remember, why do we do what we do? Right? We do it because we have an amazing ability to have a ripple effect. And if you really think about, the chiropractic model, we see individuals way more frequently than pretty much any other healthcare professional they will ever go to, right? If they're going to their medical doctor, they're only going in crisis, which hopefully that doesn't happen very often in their life. Even if they're going to, like seeing a personal trainer or going to a massage therapist, I find that individuals typically share a lot more with us as their chiropractor because we're talking about traumas, toxins, and thoughts, right? We're talking about all of those sources of stress. And so I just ask that you contribute to the ripple effect today and share this to your Facebook page. You don't know. Maybe there's a Chris in a friend's practice today that God brings that person to their mind. And because your friend watched this broadcast, picks up the phone and just checks in with Chris and says, "Hey, Chris, it's chiropractor Barb. How are you today?" You never know. But I know when we do take action, it creates a ripple effect. So thanks to all of you. Have a wonderful day. God bless you. And Brian, thanks again.
Love you, Barb. Thank you.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.